What if a single medal, small enough to fit in the palm of your hand, has been making the forces of darkness retreat for over 15 centuries? What if the object you've seen hanging around people's necks or resting on their nightstands isn't just a piece of religious jewelry, but a coded weapon, a prayer forged in metal that has protected soldiers, missionaries, prisoners, and ordinary believers through some of the darkest moments in human history? That's exactly what we're unpacking today. And by the time this video is over, you're never going to look at the Medal of Saint Benedict the same way again. Let's start with something that might surprise you. The Medal of Saint Benedict is not a charm. It's not a lucky token. It's not the Catholic version of a rabbit's foot. What it actually is, and what most people who wear it never fully understand, is a structured prayer of exorcism cast in physical form. Every single marking on that medal means something. Every abbreviation carries a word. Every word carries a declaration. And together, those declarations compose one of the most ancient and spiritually authoritative statements of defiance against evil that Christianity has ever produced. That's not hype. That's history. And we're going to walk through all of it. But before we get into the code engraved on the medal itself, we need to talk about the man whose name it carries. Because you cannot fully understand the power behind this sacramental without knowing something about the life of Benedict of Nursia, the 5th century Italian monk who became the father of Western monasticism and whose biography reads less like the life of a saint and more like a spiritual thriller. Born around 480 AD in the town of Nursia in central Italy, Benedict walked away from Roman society as a young man at the height of its moral collapse. He didn't just leave the city, he walked into the wilderness. Literally. He found a cave above the town of Subiaco and spent 3 years there in solitude, prayer, and what can only be described as an intense spiritual boot camp that would shape the rest of his life and the entire course of Christian monasticism in the West. What emerges from those years in the cave is a man who has been tried, tested, and forged. Benedict goes on to found 12 communities of monks and eventually establishes the great monastery of Monte Cassino in southern Italy, the one that would become the seedbed for the preservation of Western civilization through the Dark Ages. But what most history books gloss over are the moments of direct spiritual confrontation that defined his ministry. There were multiple documented attempts on his life. Jealous clergy who felt threatened by his influence once sent him a poisoned loaf of bread. According to the account passed down through the centuries, Benedict made the sign of the cross over it, and the bread shattered. Another time, a poisoned chalice of wine was brought to him. He blessed it. The chalice broke. These weren't just miracles of protection. They were moments that established a pattern. In the life of Benedict of Nursia, the sign of the cross was not a religious gesture. It was an active force. And that force is what got encoded into the medal. The design we know today was formally approved by Pope Benedict XVI in 1742, though its elements trace back to medieval manuscripts. When you hold a St. Benedict medal and really look at it, you're looking at a layered text. The front of the medal shows Benedict holding the rule he wrote, still followed by thousands of monks worldwide, and a cross. On the cross, 4 letters appear, C-simal, which stand for Crux Sacra Sit Mihi Lux, meaning, may the Holy Cross be my light. Around the edge of the cross, 4 more letters, Endicimd, Non Draco Sit Mihi Dux, let not the dragon be my guide. That single phrase, compressed into 4 letters on a coin-sized medal, is one of the most direct rejections of satanic influence ever forged into a devotional object. Now flip the medal to the back, or look at the reverse side in its standard design. You'll find the letter C at the top, Crux, the cross. Around the outside of the medal, a sequence of initials, V.R.S.N.S.M.V, SMKIVB. These are the initials of a 2-line exorcism prayer that reads in full, Vade Retro Satana, Nunquam Swad Mihi Vana, Sunt Malaque Libas, Ipsi Venina Bibus. Translated, Begone, Satan. Do not suggest your vanities to me. What you offer me is evil. Drink the poison yourself. That is not a gentle request. That is not a polite theological statement. That is a command, a direct, authoritative, face-to-face dismissal of the enemy, compressed into 16 letters around the rim of a medal that fits in your pocket. No wonder the Church calls it a sacramental of protection. Now here's where this connects to something deeply practical for everyday life, especially if you're someone navigating the relentless spiritual pressure of the modern world. Because the attacks don't always look like the ones in the old stories. You don't have to believe a poison chalice is headed your way to recognize that there are forces at work in this world that want to pull you toward anxiety, toward isolation, toward the slow erosion of your peace. The average American adult today is living through a level of spiritual warfare that manifests not as dramatic supernatural confrontation but as a constant background noise of fear, compulsion, distraction, and despair. And that's exactly the terrain where the theology behind the Saint Benedict medal becomes not just historically interesting but personally urgent. Think about what the inscription Vade Retro Satana actually does when it's prayed with genuine faith and understanding. It's not superstition. It's not wishful thinking. It is an alignment of the believer's will with the authority of Christ, a conscious, deliberate act of saying, "This influence has no power here. Not because I am strong, but because the cross is my light and the cross has already won." That shift in posture, from passive victim to active spiritual agent, is transformative. And for people in the second half of life, people who've been around long enough to recognize the difference between what the world tells you will bring peace and what actually does, that posture of spiritual authority is one of the most powerful tools available. This is something the community at Renova Corpo 40+ understands in a way that younger audiences sometimes don't. When you're in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, you've lived through enough cycles of trial, loss, recovery, and renewal to know that the deepest battles aren't fought in the external world. They're fought in the interior life. In the quiet of a Tuesday morning when the anxiety spikes for no clear reason. In the 3 a.m. hours when the fears you've been managing during the day come rushing back. In the moments of doubt that no productivity hack or self-care routine has ever fully resolved. And it's in those exact moments that having a physical, tangible anchor, something you can hold in your hand that connects you to a 2,000-year-old declaration that evil has been defeated, is not primitive. It is profoundly wise. The Church is careful to point out that the medal derives its efficacy not from the medal itself but from the faith and prayer with which it is used, and from the blessing imparted by a priest according to the Church's prescribed rite. A blessed Saint Benedict medal is not a magic object, but a Saint Benedict medal carried with understanding, prayed with intentionality, and worn as a daily act of consecrating yourself and your household to the authority of Christ, that becomes something genuinely powerful. And there's a right way to engage with it. Start with having the medal properly blessed by a priest. Not as a formality, but as an act of plugging the object into its intended spiritual circuit. From there, the tradition encourages believers to pray the associated prayers deliberately, especially the full Vade Retro Satana prayer, when facing spiritual pressure, temptation, fear, or any situation where the enemy's influence is felt. Place it in your home. Many families put a blessed medal above the doorway of their house as a declaration over the threshold. A statement that says, "Under this roof, the cross is the authority." Others keep one in their car, their wallet, their workplace. Not as decoration, as intentional spiritual placement. Because every physical location where a consecrated medal rests with prayerful intention becomes, in the theology of sacramentals, a point of claimed territory, a small flag planted in the name of Christ saying, "This ground belongs to him." And perhaps the most underappreciated aspect of this devotion is what it does for the interior life of the person who practices it faithfully over time. When you build a daily habit of holding the medal, recalling what it represents, and consciously renewing your rejection of whatever the enemy is offering you today, something shifts. The posture of spiritual authority stops being a concept and starts being a lived reality. You begin to recognize the enemy's tactics more quickly because you're actively watching for them. You develop what the tradition calls spiritual discernment, the ability to distinguish between what is from God and what is counterfeit. And that discernment, cultivated through consistent practice, becomes one of the most valuable things a believer can possess in a world that generates confusion at industrial scale. Saint Benedict didn't survive every assassination attempt, didn't build communities that outlasted empires, didn't write a rule that 1,300 years later still governs monastic life in dozens of countries, because he was lucky. He survived because he understood something fundamental, the cross is not a symbol of defeat. It is the ultimate declaration of victory. And everything that medal carries, every letter, every prayer, every century of testimony from believers who held it in moments of crisis, is an echo of that same declaration. Begone. Not because I say so, because he said so first. If this unlocked something in you, if you've been carrying the medal and finally understand what you've been carrying, or if you're encountering this for the first time and feel the weight of it, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us, do you wear the Saint Benedict medal? Has it played a role in a moment of protection or peace in your life? We read every single response. And if this content spoke to you, subscribe to Living Hope right now and ring the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. We go deep here, into the history, the theology, and the practical spiritual tools that actually work for real people living real lives. This is Living Hope. And the darkness doesn't get the last word.